Astute fantasy hockey GMs know the angles to take to make sure their squads are in peak shape. And on today's episode, we're breaking down one of the angles that you need to dominate bottom six beauties. Players own 20% or less that still get it done. Big time bets. Thank you for joining us for the Wednesday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hockey heads, fantasy fanatics, and degenerate gamblers, stand up, unite. It's your show, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Wednesday edition. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Steele, there's a lot that you and I have to cover on this show. We cover every single team in the NHL, a lot of takes, a lot of previews, a lot of predictions. But there's some angles that you and I have to come on here and take that I think are the key to really building a good fantasy squad. I alluded to it right off the top. On today's episode, we're taking a look at bottom six beauties. Today's NHL, Steele, actually, that 1 through 4 line has never been more in flux, but most teams still run a system of 4 lines, 1 through 4. And in this league, in these fantasy leagues that you and I are in, sometimes there is really not a lot to go out there when you're looking at additions, holes to fill. So I think today's angle, 20% are owned or less. Players you and I like, bring fantasy value, bring value to their team on the ice, and of course, going to bring a lot of value to what we're doing on today's episode. That will be wrapped up with big time bets at the end of the episode. 14 games on Wednesday's board. Steele, my friend, break this down for me. A couple of your favorite bottom six beauties. I know there's some names on here that I'm going to go back to the well on, but what do you got? Who are you looking at? Because these players can really be the difference.
Yeah, and I was trying to look at players that I haven't really talked recently on or haven't talked a lot about over the last 6 months, and this is a player that we talked frequently about actually last season. And I want to go back to Mr. Dependable Adam Henrique of the Anaheim Ducks. Nice. 8% rostered right now, 3 goals, 9 points in 17 games. He's got 25 shots, 17 blocks, and 12 hits, on pace to blow past a few of those categories from last year. And he's been in doing so. He's in a reduced role, from the perspective of playing. He's down to the third line. He's also gone from 18 minutes of average ice time last season to under 16 minutes this season so far. So he's been given a little bit of a reduced role on the playing surface, but not a reduced role for how important he is to be a guide and a mentor to some of these young centers for the Anaheim Ducks, like Leo Carlson and Mason McTavish, and and Trevor Zegras as well. I know he's injured right now, or has been injured a lot of the time so far this season. But Adam Henrique is one of those guys, I talked about, that he can move up and down the lineup and play well with whoever he's playing with on that line. So for me, Adam Henrique, got to start off with him below 10% right now. He's at 8%, and he's getting it done in a reduced role.
Gotta love what's going on in Anaheim right now, up front especially. They have a nice little mix going on of balanced veteran skill and young upcoming talent. And it's clicking right now for this Ducks team, considering they were basically at the bottom of the barrel of every single category that mattered over the last 2 seasons. They are leaps and bounds better. Not ready to call them a playoff team just yet, Steele, but give my boy Lukas Dostal another year to get his legs under him. I'm not going to go down that path, but I love that you're highlighting Adam Henrique. And I think one of the things I just wanted to get off my chest first about every single player that I'm going to talk about, I got 4 names to mention. 2 of them play together, Steele, is I'm also buying into what's going on these teams and on the lines that they play on. And I'll start with Yanni Gourde in Seattle, Steele. Owned at only 9% on Yahoo and 4% on ESPN. Yanni Gourde's story is one of the best in the NHL. He had a journey to get to the NHL. Absolutely love this player. Dynamo at 5'9", Steele. 3 goals, 6 assists, 28 PIMs, 36 shots on net. He fills out the categories, 13 blocks, 26 hits. I love what this guy does. And when you look at the line he's on, Oliver Bjugstad and Eli Tolvanen on his flanks, I like that line a lot in Seattle. I think the book is out on Seattle this year, Steele. I mentioned them as an enigma team. I can't really put my finger on what they're going to be, but they're up there in terms of above average squads in the West. So I love this value. Good team, good line, and a really good player who, I believe his minutes are on the rise too, Steele. That's another thing with these players. Yeah, they're 20% or under. He's eating almost 18 minutes of ice time per night. So maybe in deeper leagues, these are the exact kind of players that you want on your squad to augment the obvious bigger names that you want to anchor your club.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do on this episode, trying to find some of, not the hidden gems, but those hidden depth players that can really help the success for your weekly matchups in your roster as well. I've got a couple of players. I've kind of, again, trying to find players that I haven't talked a lot about and players that I've also picked up off the waiver wire in the last week or so. And one of those guys that I've picked up at the beginning of the week, or at the end of last week, actually, was Nick Bjugstad of the Arizona Coyotes. Rostered at 7% right now. 3 goals, 11 points in 18 games. The peripherals are pretty solid. 31 shots, 15 blocks, and 23 hits. He's getting the banger league beauty out of him. He's got 20 penalty minutes on the season. He's on the second power play unit. He's on the first penalty kill unit. And we know a couple of times that the Coyotes like to take some chances on the PK when they have that opportunity. So again, for me, trying to go out of the norm for what I've looked at for player wise, and trying to find those hidden players who can really help you on a weekly matchup.
I absolutely love that you brought up both Bjugstad and Henrique. They would definitely make my honorable mentions. These guys are veterans too, if we're talking about it. And of course, yeah, we're looking at this with the fantasy angle, but also sometimes, Steele, when it comes to those last couple of pieces on your bench or the last couple of pieces you're filling out your roster, you're going to have to really get creative. And yeah, of course, there's a bit of luck to this whole thing, most definitely. But why not buy into Nick Bjugstad's been getting it done as a bottom 6 forward, basically his whole career, to pretty good success. And yes, of course, he's on the Arizona Coyotes, but he's had a good start and he's playing with some pretty good young pieces around him. So make sure you're reading into the situations. Make sure the deployment is what you like. You're going to like the rest of how this episode is deployed, Steele, because I got a couple of nice names that, honestly, you said it so nicely, I go to as well. I love keeping the waiver wire hot with some of these exact names, depending on your format. They're probably not out there, but the format of the rest of this episode will be straight flames, wrapping it up with big time bets for Wednesday's busy 14-game NHL betting board. Steele and I are trying to keep this money train rolling. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. A player on your favorite team could pop 50. Your favorite team could hoist Lou Stanley's mug, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, baby, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. What we like most about the app, Steele and I love that you can bet on everything from, of course, the NHL, NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB, all on Sleeper. That multi-functionality of the app, got to connect with the other fans. I love Chirp and Steele on there, and your entries can all be made in under 1 minute. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
Much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We got to talk about this every single episode because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We got you 24/7 every single minute of the day. We appreciate all of the love and support you show us every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe, follow button, and 5-star review. We really do appreciate it, and hopefully we can reach our goal of 1,500 subs by the end of 2023. That would be an absolute beautiful way to end off a spectacular year so far. Moving forward, though, with some hidden gems, some hidden targets on the waiver wire, rostered below 20%.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to a team that, not really a team, but a coach that I've vented a lot about, and that's the Philadelphia Flyers.
Here
Got to
we
go to
go.
the Philadelphia Flyers.
Here we
and
go.
I want to talk about Joel Farabee, who I've actually picked up in 2 of my fantasy leagues. He's been on my team for the last 2 weeks, and he's been pretty solid so far. Seven goals,
Yes.
14 points total, 14-point total in 18 games this season. He's on pace for a career high 64 points, which is well above the 39 points a couple seasons ago. He's on pace to crush his career high in shots of over 170 this season, all while playing 2 minutes of average 2 minutes less of average ice time from the year prior. And I think a lot of his success so far this year comes from the different mindset and mentality and that he was using last year. Not as temperamental. He's not as flustered when making decisions with the puck. He's not taking bad penalties or chasing guys around and finish bad hits. He's only been in the box 1 time this season compared to 22 times last year. So
good point.
He's making the smart decisions. He's staying out of the box. He's not putting his team a man down and putting them at a disadvantage. And he's staying in the right mindset, where at times last year you could see the frustration boiling, through all of his emotions on the ice. So for me, Joel Farabee's been pretty solid for the first 2 months this season. Only rostered at 12% and 14 points in 18 games. He's getting it done.
Absolutely love that you brought this up, and you made a really, really good point on another episode earlier this week. By the way, make sure you check out the YouTube channel and smash that subscribe button. But you made the excellent point that Cam Atkinson and Sean Couturier's return to this lineup, Steele, has really done wonders, not only for its immediate on-ice success, but it's really allowing all these young guys to do their thing. Morgan Frost has looked really, really good. I really like what they have going on with Owen Tippett up there as well. Travis Sanheim on the back end is finally proving his worth. And I think a lot of it has to do with that steadying presence of both Atkinson and especially Sean Couturier, who we know can play a really good full 200-foot game. One of the best two-way centers in the business over the last number of seasons when he's healthy. And right now they are. And look at this team go. They have been one of the bigger surprises to start the season. And I know they're still a young team. The back end could use some work, but Carter Hart has looked good, even though he's been a bit banged up. So kudos to you for bringing this up, because I think there's going to be a few other pieces that you might be able to snag off that Flyers team on the come-up, Steele. Speaking of which, you and I said off the top of the episode, lots of predictions, lots of previews went out there. One of the ones that I was buying into, though, was the success of this Winnipeg Jets club. And right now, one of the biggest reasons for this Jets success is their ability to roll 3 really good lines. Yeah, you can make the argument for their 4th line, but the top 9 in Winnipeg right now, there's not many other teams out there that are rolling with this kind of effectiveness. And I'm looking at that 3rd line, Steele, and Adam Lowry, Mason Appleton, and Nito Niederreiter. All 3 of those guys could have made this list, but I'm looking specifically right now at Adam Lowry. And I really do think this was a really good idea by the Winnipeg Jets to throw the C on this guy's jersey, because, and I know that doesn't bring any tangible points to your fantasy squad, but I love this guy's game, Steele. He plays with a little bit of edge. He gets 18 penalty minutes, 2 goals, 9 assists so far on the year. He's not a shooter. He's got only 18 shots, but he blocks shots as well, Steele, and I really like his effectiveness. He's the kind of player, honestly, that if you were able to augment your big stars, your big names on your roster with the kind of players like Adam Lowry, you're probably sitting real pretty on this season. And just to bring it back to the overall success of this Winnipeg Jets team, only 5 teams in the NHL have scored more goals than them this year, Steele, and that's the Canucks, Lightning, Kings, Knights, and Avalanche. So this offensive unit is clicking, and the balanced depth is really, really a big part of it.
There is a few players from this team that we could probably talk about on this list who have just been very excellent so far this season. I've got 2 more players. I'm just going to talk about one real quick because I've talked about him a lot recently. Okay. I got to mention him, though, Oliver Bjugstad.
Yes.
I am cheating a little bit here because he is rostered
his ownership
above 20%. He's at 32% rostered right now, but he is in the bottom 6. He is one of those guys that can move up and down.
I like it. We're stretching it, but that's okay.
We're stretching it, but he is on that 3rd line with Yanni Gourde. He's got 6 goals, 15 points. He shoots the puck a lot. He gets it done on the power play, a lot of it on 5-on-5 as well. But I really just like his game. And my last player before I throw it back over to you is Tyler Myers, another defenseman that I've picked up a few times this season. 2 goals, 19 points in 19 games. He's on pace for 40 points, which would be the 2nd highest of his career, and probably it will be the highest since his rookie season with the Buffalo Sabres, putting up 48 points that season. But he's doing pretty good, again, in a reduced role. Actually, pretty much the entirety of his career, he's been above 21 minutes of average ice time. He's now down to 18 and a half minutes of average ice time this season with the Vancouver Canucks, and it's helping him with his overall game both ways on the ice. He's got a decent amount of peripheral stats, 21 shots, 36 blocks, and 28 hits. So the peripherals are very nice. He's getting some penalty minutes if that's what helps. If that's one of the categories in your leagues, he's a +10, which is going to help again, which is why one of the reasons why I picked him up, because the ± is a category in my league. So overall, through the different categories that Tyler Myers can provide, he's bringing a little bit of offense. He's bringing some penalty minutes. He's bringing those peripheral stats, hits, blocks, and shots, and he's getting it done all over the ice right now. So I really like Tyler Myers, and then I picked him up in a couple of leagues.
Straight up and down, hats off to Rick Tocchet, who has turned this Vancouver club and culture all the way around 360. And yeah, it's still got a lot of time in this season, Steele, for things to turn around. But right now, with Thatcher Demko in net, Quinn Hughes on the blue line, and them being able to have two offensive elite lines up front, that's all you need, really, to go on a serious run for that cup. So I'm not ready to throw cup contender on their title just yet, me personally. But oh boy, are people out west already drinking that Kool-Aid deep, Steele. Before we get to break and drink some Kool-Aid on the bet front, I'll throw out my final player, and I'm cheating a bit too here, Steele. And this is where ownership numbers really can be a finicky thing, because Phillip Danault is owned at 17% on Yahoo. But when you look at him on ESPN, Steele, he's owned at 41%. So I'm cheating a little bit on this one too. But you, again, brought up the point that these are players that you and I go to in tough spots where they're reliable. We like what they bring on the ice, and usually that translates into some fantasy success. And for a guy like Phillip Danault, this guy is just all regularly in the top 10 in Selke voting. We talked about a 200-foot game. This is another player who has that 200-foot game. And right now, Steele, taking a look at his deployment, playing right in the middle with Kevin Fiala and Trevor Moore on a really good LA Kings squad. This goes to the point that I mentioned earlier as well. The deployment and the mix, where all of those things play into the bottom six beauty in all of these players. Phillip Danault on the season this year, a little bit of everything for you, Steele. 4 goals, 8 assists, 4 penalty minutes. Okay, 42 shots on net. The other night, he had 3 block shots. He can do a little bit of everything, and I just really do like what he can do for this lineup in terms of being a steadying presence. Phillip Danault, really good backup peripheral piece for your center roster.
I quite don't understand why he's rostered so low, because he brings it offensively. He brings it with a couple of those different categories as well.
Yeah.
It's one of those players, again, we talk about him so much.
He's a first-round draft pick, Steele. 26 overall back in 2011. Just throwing it out there.
We talk about the LA Kings. We talk about some of these players quite frequently. And again, it just doesn't seem like a lot of people out there are getting the message that we're throwing down. But hey, that's okay. We're trying out here. We're doing our best. We're going to do our best moving forward with big time bets as well. Get back on the money train is what we do best on big time bets. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedonnhl and get on your way to being your best self. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some type of sadness or anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those negative feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all of the stress and change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and give you back the tools to manage everything going on in your life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnhl today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe, leave a follow, and a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us every single day, Monday through Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. And let's get over to big time bets, where the money is made, Flip. I've got 2 picks from the same game and then 1 to end off the night, but I really do want to hear from you first, and
Appreciate that.
at least 2 of your picks if you want to rattle off all 3 of them.
I'll do 2 because they're from the same game. And honestly, Steele, we've been hot right now. I'm not even trying to pump our own tires. Wins are wins, baby, and I'm feeling it right now. So I'm liking these picks. First one, Vancouver at Colorado. We're talking a lot about this Vancouver Canucks team. Where do you think, if you were just a guess, Steele, I'm going to a total here. What would you guess I'm going to in a Vancouver Colorado game?
I'd have to guess the over.
It's got to be the over 6.5 minus 123. And when you look at these numbers, both of these teams are involved in a ton of high-scoring games right now. And the numbers back it up. 5 of the last 6 of Vancouver's over the number. 7 of the last 8 games of Colorado overall over the number. And for some reason, when Colorado plays in the Western Conference, it's always high scoring. 7 straight games against Western Conference opponents over the total. I know that last stat was a little bit sketch, but I'm feeling it. Give me the over at a minus 123. Georgiev is struggling a little bit right now, Steele, and he's having a tendency to have these blow-up games, and then the Colorado Avalanche come back and blow the doors off the team the next night. Even if they get somewhere in between, I'm still seeing 3 or 4 goals for each team anyway. Got to bring up a player, speaking of which, that we haven't talked about very much. How about Valeri Nichushkin on a little bit of a heater here, Steele? 7 goals, 8 assists for 15 points in 17 games. And right now, on a 4-game goal streak with goals in against the Nashville Predators, Dallas Stars, Anaheim Ducks, and Seattle Kraken. I'm really liking Nichushkin's game. Multi-point nights in the last 3. So give me Valeri Nichushkin anytime point. The odds are out there fluctuating, but I'm really liking a big night for the Colorado Avalanche, a high-scoring one involving Valeri Nichushkin.
I guess that's where I'm going to have to start off then with that Colorado Avalanche game against the Vancouver Canucks. I'm going with the player prop myself as well, but it's going to be Nathan MacKinnon anytime goal. He's been goalless in 5 straight games right now. He's been rock solid. He's been playmaking. He's been getting it done with the apples, but it's been too long for Nathan MacKinnon without a goal. So I'm going to go on a hunch here and say MacKinnon buries one against those Vancouver Canucks. That's actually going to be my lock of the night as well. But my 2 picks come from the same game here. I'm going to the Rangers money line against the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Rangers Penguins under 6.5 in this matchup. Rangers are rock solid. I know they got, they got not embarrassed, but they lost a pretty decent matchup against the Dallas Stars, 6-3.
They got slapped around.
It would have been 6-2, but Goudreau scored a late goal in the third period. But nonetheless, Rangers are 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. The Penguins are dealing with some injuries right now to Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, and a few others. And also in the last 8 matches between these 2 teams have gone under the number. So Rangers money line, Rangers Penguins under 6.5. And then the lock of the night, Nathan MacKinnon anytime goal against the Canucks.
I feel like player props on the Colorado Avalanche are almost where to go every single night. Cale Makar anytime assist.
And the Canucks player props too. They've been
100%. Yeah, definitely. Which is exactly why I'm buying into the over here, Steele. If there's any of my picks that I would add into a parlay and not bet them straight up, it would be the Vancouver Colorado situation. Lock of the night, though. A player that is got to be a whole lot better, and he's got 15 points in 15 games, and it's Connor McDavid. And look, this is obviously still, in my opinion, the best player in the game. Is it the best player right now today? You could probably still make that argument, but there'd be a good conversation around it. However, all I'm trying to get at is Connor McDavid anytime assist is my lock of the night. And the Edmonton Oilers have had their struggles, right? But Connor McDavid is coming on here. He's been in the media talking about his poor play. This isn't going to last for Connor McDavid. I don't know what's going to happen for the Edmonton Oilers overall, Steele, but I am very confident that this kid is still going to be right there in the mix in the top 3 for the Art Ross. He's going to be right there in the mix for the Hart, because in a second, and no pun intended, in a heartbeat, he can double this point total in a matter of games. He can have 4, 5, 6-point nights. He just hasn't done it yet, but I think he starts doing it. Into Carolina on Wednesday night, a tough spot for this Edmonton Oilers team, so you might not be loving it. Also, Edmonton, 3 wins out of their last 10 against the Carolina Hurricanes, but I think this is one of those games, Steele, that I swear to you, swear down, fam, if they lose this one, they're in real trouble, because I could smell a prolonged losing streak. I think they need to come out and blow the doors off of Carolina. We'll see what happens, but I'm loving Connor McDavid to answer the bell. Connor McDavid anytime assist is my lock of the night.
It's just one of those games that we're all waiting for right now for Connor McDavid to open the doors and really just blow by everybody in
Yep.
the NHL point leader standings. Because you're right, because at any given time he can pop off for 4 points or 5 points. We just have not yet seen it this season, but we're waiting.
Correct.
We're being patient.
It's coming.
We're not too far gone on the Edmonton Oilers, but hopefully they can turn things around against the Carolina Hurricanes. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. And again, make sure you go to Locked On. They have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.